Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We have a lot to get into, including the Pirates, who again win a series. That's back-to-back series wins. First time they've done that all year. But Andrew McCutchen being taken out of a game. Also, Adam Frazier will talk about his surge. We'll get into Ladarius Green being cut by the Pittsburgh Steelers. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Penguins surging to a 7-0 win today to take their first series lead against Ottawa. And here is your panel. Left to right on your television screen, we have Andrew Fillipponi from the Cochran Pony Show. To the left in the middle is Tim Benz, DK Pittsburgh Sports. And to the right, Chris Mack, host of pre- and post-game on 93.7 The Fan, covering the Pirates. All right, so let's get right into this. Tim Benz, they've won the last two. Goaltending change seemed to be something big, not just because Matt Murray was coming in, but what it represented, I think, to the rest of the team. How much credit do you give Mike Sullivan for this turnaround?
Well, if he was as sold on Matt Murray being the best option to win the Cup, despite how well Marc-Andre Fleury had been playing, I'm almost now surprised that he didn't go to him after the Game 1 loss. I mean, if that was the thinking, that as soon as Murray was healthy and when they finally had a loss, they would go to him. I'm kind of surprised they didn't go to him after Game 1. What does it say to the team? I think it was a sign, a wake-up call, if you will, that they better play desperate the next game they have. Guys, you could have put Wendell Young, Ron Tugnutt, Ken Reggett, not even Ken Reggett back then, Ken Reggett now. Ken could have gone in there and won these two games with the way the rest of the team was playing. It didn't matter who the goaltender was. The rest of the team in front of the goalie played exceptionally well, and yes, Murray has been excellent too.
But the goalie, in my opinion, Tim, somehow projects that onto the team playing in front of him. I don't think your point is you can put anybody in there. They can stop 16 or 17 basic shots, maybe 2 or 3 high-quality ones. But those games don't seem to happen when Marc-Andre Fleury's in net. There's something about Matt Murray in there.
He gave up one goal, one regulation goal in 3 games. What are you talking about?
I'm saying, Tim, there's something about Matt Murray in there that makes the rest of the Penguins play better.
I don't know if I necessarily buy into that. I think this is a great move by Sullivan. I think it's great timing on this move by Sullivan. I was shocked. I think we were all astounded that after the way Fleury had carried them through the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, he decided at the first sign of trouble to go with Matt Murray. Maybe not the first sign of trouble. He let Fleury play out of it against the Capitals. I should correct myself there. But well, I was astounded.
Yeah, Jari was the goaltender behind him then, Chris.
But exactly. But the point here is I don't think any of us can look at this and say we expected Mike Sullivan to make that move.
No, I think all 3 of us on this panel thought that Marc-Andre Fleury should have been in net for Game 4.
And with good reason, too. His numbers after a loss have been really good. 4-1, 1.80 goals against.
My only point is that this is the closest the last 2 games I've seen the Penguins look like the team from last year's playoff run.
Yes.
And does that have anything to do with Trevor Daley back in the line?
Maybe. It probably does, Chris. But Mike Sullivan has talked about how Matt Murray seems to project a calming influence on the guys in front of him. And I buy into that after watching these last two.
I would also suggest real quick, Bob, that sometimes when Fleury is in a groove, the Penguins get real loose in front of him and expect him to make every save.
Yeah, I think that's also part of it, too. But bottom line is there was, to me, no bad choice there. Two pretty good goaltenders, and one of the reasons why they kept both. All right, let's talk about a difference today, and it's becoming an emerging difference. That is special teams. Andrew, the Penguins killed everything off today. 4 Ottawa power plays. By the way, they're struggling. 0 for 28, I think it is now. And the Penguins got 3 power play goals. Crosby, first time in his career, 3 straight games with a power play goal. Talk about that and what it means going forward. Ottawa doesn't look to have an answer.
Well, I think it was important to get power play tallies in the last series when clearly at even strength you were outmatched by Washington. I don't quite feel that way about this. So for me, it's actually more about the penalty killing. Is that when you're a man down, you put Carlson on the ice in that situation where he can dictate terms. For them to stop them in those situations, to me, when you're the better team, you can give a team life by giving them special teams goals. And we haven't seen anything close to that from Ottawa in this series.
I made a huge point about the special teams coming into the series on DK Sports Radio. I thought it could be the defining part of this series, and it's starting to manifest that way. I mean, you look at the special teams in this game. What were they? A perfect 7 for 7, right? 4 kills, 3 power play goals. The Senators coming into the series took a lot of penalties, especially during the regular season. They didn't kill them at a great rate, at an average rate. And the Penguins had a really good power play in the regular season. The Senators did not have a real good power play coming into the season throughout the couple playoff rounds they had before the Pens. Finally, I feel like in the last 2 games, the Penguins have taken advantage of something that was there earlier in this series, and it's manifesting now for them.
Yeah, and I think the special teams play we've seen is a function of the style of play of each team, is it not? I mean, we've seen big, large defensemen, older defensemen. I think of Mathot and Phaneuf specifically for the Senators, who at this point in the postseason, they've never played this many games in their career in a single season. I think both topped out at 10 playoff games at one point in their career in one season, are not keeping up with the play. And that's both on the kill, and they don't have the ability to add anything on the man advantage as well. Whereas you look at the Penguins, and yes, they're without Chris Letang. They're without Justin Schultz. Trevor Daley's addition back into the lineup in the middle of this series, I think, has helped. They've got the talent on the blue line. Despite those injuries, they're still faster and more offensively gifted on the blue line. I think that's been the key to not just the special teams in this series, but the series as a whole.
Speaking of defensemen, Andrew, why do so many people don't like Olli Määttä? I mean, I sit here and defend him, and I'm an apologist, but I look at everything I see from him, and I'm always impressed by overall his body of work.
Well, because he's a defenseman that doesn't fit into a box, Bob. He's not a big point producer, so people don't like the fact that he doesn't put up, 10 goals a year and, 25, 30 assists maybe. And then the other side of it, he's not overly physical. So I think fans still seem to want to put defensemen into one of those 2 categories. He does neither. I thought he had a bad regular season, to be frank with you. I didn't think he never looked like his skating legs were there. So I've seen a transformative Olli Määttä in these playoffs, and certainly in the last 2 games.
I don't think he was great in the regular season, but I don't think he was bad. Bob, I think in Pittsburgh sports fan circles, the lowest form of human life are the Fleury haters. Catching up to them quite quickly, or better said, descending down to them quickly, are the Määttä haters. The guy is a plus 23 regular season and postseason. That's not a be-all, end-all stat, but when I get tweets like I got today from people saying he's more often bad than he is good, how do you look at that number and say that, particularly from the Columbus series on?
I will jump in, though, and say I believe Brooks Orpik was like, 3rd in the NHL in plus-minus this year? Right.
Oh, it could be an inflated stat, but I think to your point, Andrew, doing some of the things that he does and, not being in a box, it's a little bit more representative than some other skaters that you have that play that position.
And I think if we want to talk about what box he fits into, he doesn't necessarily fit into the perfect mold of what a Penguins defenseman looks like. Quick skater, out from behind his own net very quickly, very decisive. He is more methodical. He is more persistent in his play. He's slower, there, I said it, than the other guys on the blue line. That doesn't make him worse. It just means at times it gets accentuated when Bobby Ryan, for example, blows around him in overtime in Game 1 and scores that goal.
Yeah, but everybody's looking at that goal. He's one of 4 guys that did something wrong on that
You're
play.
right,
One of
you're right.
4 guys.
But when you're not as fast as the other guys on the blue line, that thing is easier to see for the average everyday fan or the Määttä hater.
I got 45 seconds left. I want to talk about Scott Wilson hit, because so far in this postseason, we have seen the NHL Department of Non-Safety do nothing. Bobby Ryan hit, Taru Adel, it's a concussion, nothing. Before that, Niskanen, Crosby, nothing. Today we see at the end a ridiculously cheap shot there by Tommy Wingels into the head of Scott Wilson. So, Tim, do we expect nothing?
This one I expect something for. Something should be there for this one. What else was he doing? That wasn't self-defense. That wasn't adjusting to the plane of a different player. It was late in the game. He's a garbage player. He was going after Wilson and attacking his head. His arm went out, hit him in the temple. That should be a suspension. Yeah,
the league's not going to do anything, Bob, and then the league will continue to wonder why they don't get any ratings when they've got their most talented superstar on the ice deep into the playoffs again.
Well, I would just say with the NHL, it depends on how badly hurt or injured Wilson is.
Which is just ludicrous.
Which is stupid. Right. Which is dumb, stupid. Mike Milbury
especially with a concussion. Like, how do you tell with a concussion? How do you gauge that?
You don't. I mean, they may as well go around and do what Milbury did and take a shoe off and start hitting people. You're okay with that. And he's your analyst. All right, we're going to take a break here. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Steelers, and then later some Pirates. Steelers let go of Ladarius Green. Worst free agent signing ever. We'll get into that next right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown.